Welcome to the center of the universe and the home of the 18-time Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts. This is the X's and Argos podcast with Ben Grant and JB.
Welcome to the X's and Argos pregame walkthrough, brought to you by Something in the Water Brewing. Ben Grant joined as always by JB, and we are here to get you set for the Argos' final game of the regular season. Toronto traveling to Edmonton this Friday night to take on the Elks. Lots to talk about this week. There's a really interesting signing, quarterback for next season, that I really think the Argos may have something in. And so I will set that all up for you and tell you what I know about that from having watched a little bit of film. Plus, the Argos attendance is up again this year. All 9 home games from the regular season are in. We've got the numbers. We'll go through that and talk about why there are some real positive signs there in the attendance. PFF scores this week. Chad Kelly honored yet again. Third time in the last 6 weeks for him, and a bunch of other Argos got a nod from PFF as well. We'll go through those. We got a great question for Pick 6. We're going to go through our game preview, setting up the Elks-Argos matchup. Plus, we've got our injury report, OCDC, one thing, predictions, put me down for 20, and our CFL picks. All that and more coming up on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. JB, it was awesome this week. You and I down at Something in the Water Brewing, talking to everyone that was there. I love when we're able to do that, and I'm hoping that for the East semifinal, everyone's able to make it out to Something in the Water, so that if you haven't been able to get there all season long, you can try out Longboat Pale Ale, the beer that was made for fans of the Double Blue. You can try out some of their award-winning beer as well. They've got a great selection, lots of stuff to choose from, and a wide range of stuff as well. I can't drink beer on game day because I'm working, and so they've got a lot of great non-alcoholic options, including some hop water and non-alcoholic beer. So there's plenty to choose from for everybody. Make sure you make it to Something in the Water Brewing for the Argos' next and final home game of the season, the East semifinal. All right, JB, let's get into things. I want to start talking about the quarterback signing the Argos made this past week. So Tucker Horn is the quarterback they signed, and you and I we've talked a lot about signing another quarterback. This is not the kind of signing I thought we were going to see, because we had been talking about getting a guy that was sort of short yardage specialist, but it wasn't really a signing for this season. It's a signing for next season. Tucker Horn is not a short yardage specialist. That's actually not at all going to be his game. Instead, he is a little bit smaller in size, but he's a guy that can sling the football all over the place. So he doesn't have the height that you would normally want. He doesn't have the weight that you would normally want. And those things concern me. And I'm going to go with, since we're doing some of the concerns first, let me throw in the other concern. I know this is not a great way to sell a player that I'm excited about, but yes, height, weight, concerns. I don't see pro level arm strength there either. And those are 3 red flags. However, the stuff I like from him, highly intelligent football player. From watching, and I had a chance to sit down and watch multiple games. I really like his decision making. Like, what jumps off to me is how he's clearly studied. He's clearly a film junkie and just going through tape after tape after tape of his opposition. His reads were excellent. He has elite ball placement. Even when there's just the tiniest of windows, he's able to get it there. And he does make up for his lack of arm strength by kind of full body powering it through. It looks a little odd sometimes, but when he needs to get the ball out in a hurry, like a bullet pass or a bomb deep downfield, he almost looks like a baseball pitcher, where it's just like his full body energy is into it just to make sure that ball gets there. So there are some concerns there, but yeah, from his ball placement, his ability to study tape and then have that translate into what he looks like on the field. He's fearless in the pocket. He stands in there, holds his ground. He takes some shots sometimes, but he also got to play behind a pretty solid offensive line. And so we'll see how that translates. But in terms of what I project for him, I really think he's going to end up on the Argos roster next season. And I could see him as the number 3 quarterback who is fighting to be the number 2 quarterback next year. What do you think about a signing like this late in the year, like we see with Tucker Horn?
I don't know. You're certainly more excited than I am. I wish he had some other measurables that would make me, I guess more excited to watch my camp. I mean, he clearly is highly accurate. I guess that's good for the backup quarterback. I don't know. Like for me, um, I can't say that I'm super excited. And to be honest, like a backup for Kelly, like I don't really need somebody to push Kelly. Ideally, I'd have somebody who kind of complements Kelly. So I gotta say, when it comes right down to it, I'm team big short yardage quarterback. So this is not doing it for me, to be honest.
Yeah, and he's not that, and I agree. And I still do think there is a need there. I'm not saying that that need goes away. I think what the way I see this is I want to bring in a big short yardage guy. I do think that's a priority in the offseason. But I also think a guy like Tucker Horn, you watch the way that he plays, he certainly looks like with that accuracy, that seems like a guy that can come in and not just run the football, but throw the football around and be successful. Now, I don't think he necessarily runs the same way that Chad Kelly does in terms of how he would conduct the offense. I think there are going to be some differences there. But I think it would be a really nice battle between he and Cam Dukes next season for that sort of other thrower. You got your runner that we're both looking for. We don't know who that might be, if anyone. And maybe the organization doesn't even go that route. Like maybe the organization decides we don't want to bring in a quarterback who is just a runner and that's all he can do. We feel that's a waste of a roster spot. So maybe we don't even get that. And maybe it ends up being a trio like Kelly, Dukes, and Horn or something like that. I don't know. But I think, Horn is a guy that I think will need time. And so I don't know if you want to push him to get action right away, but maybe he can learn behind two other guys. Maybe third string is the best spot for him. I just think, I don't know, watching his film, I got pretty excited by it. And that doesn't happen every time I watch film on a signing. Sometimes I'm like, okay, well, I see what they see. That's interesting. But this one I was more fascinated with, maybe because it's the quarterback position, but I do think I thought his tape looked really good. So we'll see what it looks like. He'll be one to watch certainly in training camp next year. But we've got stuff to talk about this season still. And let's talk about the great attendance numbers. So I'm going to set this up. Now, first of all, yes, I understand. And for those, I know, I love how many non-Argos fans actually listen to this podcast. We do get comments from fans of other teams that listen. And for you folks, yes, I know that Toronto is at the bottom of the league in attendance. Yes, I understand that. I'm not suggesting that by my tone and my excitement that I now think Toronto is leading the league in attendance. That's not what I'm saying. I'm really excited about the increase that we've seen. The Argos attendance numbers have been moving steadily in a very positive direction. If we kind of go back over like the last 10 years, 2016 stands out as a peak. That's the year they moved into BMO Field. Numbers were good. That's the highest it's been in a long time. But prior to 2016, it was low. After 2016, it was low. And then since the pandemic, we have seen the attendance start to surge back to 2016 levels. And last year, the attendance went up 20.5%, which is a massive jump. But that was also aided by coming out of the pandemic and everything else, as things were starting to get a little bit back to normal. But still, you still can't ignore it. It was the biggest increase in the entire league, 20.5%. This year, they're up another 5.7% in attendance. And so I think these are very positive signs. And what I would add to that is I think this is as young a crowd I've seen at BMO Field in a long time. I still think the base is older, like all of the CFL's audience, but this is a much younger BMO Field crowd than we saw certainly in 2019, 2018, 2017. Like this is working, the appealing to the younger demographic, the younger age groups. Is that in line with how you see this going, the trend in terms of the attendance numbers?
Yeah, I think I mean, obviously, everything is relative. And, on a scale, I think we're right to be positive. Just anecdotally, I would say that, the crowd does seem to be a little bit younger, which I think is, a good sign. I think the games game day crew has done a good job of keeping the game entertaining and sort of bright and shiny, to try and get kids under 12 interested. I They could keep going further down that road. Um, I mean, you and I have talked about this. I do think we should paper the stands more. I do think more reaching out to high school teams and local football teams. I would still try and reach out and try and hook people into being interested in coming to the games. I mean, I think there's still a lot of room for growth there, among kids who play high school football. There's a lot of kids who play high school football who don't watch the CFL. In fact, that's probably most of them. And I'd love to see a concerted effort to try and get more of that age interested in going to the games. But I think the atmosphere at BMO and the game day crew have done a very nice job of making it terrific. And we've had amazing weather this year. I don't think that can be underestimated too. It's been oddly. I mean, honestly, it's like today's 24. It's been like California this year.
The weather has been really good, and all season long, even those early games where it looked like it was going to rain, like for 3 straight home games, the forecast didn't look good, and then the rain held off, and it ended up being a nice day or a nice afternoon, evening.
I would certainly be, a little bit depressed if the numbers had not gone up, because I love the game times this year. I thought that the mix of game times were better than normal, a little less random than other years in terms of consistency of time, and the weather has been really good, and the team has been competitive. So, if all those factors did result in an increase in attendance, I'd be a little bit worried. But they did, so I think that has to give the organization, at least a little bit of excitement. I don't know how much MLSE weighs in on any of this stuff, but it's got to be somewhat positive.
I think so. And I just you said 3 things that I want to comment on. I hope I don't forget the second and third by the time I finish the first one, because that happens to me a lot. But yeah, the first one, I've forgotten the first one now. No, there it is. So first of all, I would love to see more Saturday afternoons. Like this past week, that was an amazing crowd it was a Saturday afternoon game. I know the game was important, but games against Ottawa don't typically draw as well as some other games. Certainly games against Hamilton or Saskatchewan, who tend to bring in their own base. To have a game against Ottawa in what would be expected to be cold weather. I know it wasn't, but we didn't know that weeks in advance. And yet Saturday afternoon, for whatever reason, that kickoff time, that 3:00 kickoff on Saturday afternoon, 20,487, I think the number was. I wonder if they had more of those, because my family went, my kids went. My kids love going to Argos games. They don't get to a lot because they have so many late kickoffs. They have a lot of extracurricular commitments. They need to get to bed early because they've got to get up early. And it's really tough for them. They don't make it to the end, even watching on TV. They are usually in bed at halftime. And so an afternoon game gives them the option. And so my wife and kids were down there for the game. And if we're doing it, I'm sure there are a lot of other families doing that as well. And so that's one thing that I would like to see more of. I know the Argos can't control that. That's the league sort of saying what the schedule is. I'd love to see them request more. I don't know if that would fall on deaf ears or not, but I'm not sure how that would work. The other thing that you said that I wanted to comment on, as I'm starting to forget this. Younger demographics. Both my kids play a lot of flag football. They're on a few different teams. Everywhere we go, there are Argos-related events, Argos players. The Grey Cup is often there at almost every single thing we do. Yesterday, my daughter was at something. There was an Argos presence there. On Saturday, in the morning, when my son was at something, there's an Argos presence there. Everything they do, there's Argos-related stuff. And so I still hear people talk about how they have this belief that the Argos aren't out there in the community and they aren't engaging. And I'm telling you, that's not true. And it's especially visible at the youth level, and that's where it's going to start paying off. And you see it with the teammates for that my kids have. They're Argos fans, and they are excited about the Argos. They're excited to go to Argos games, and that, as they get older, obviously is going to start paying dividends. And we're starting to see that because they've been doing this now for several years. The third thing I wanted to say I have forgotten about, but maybe it'll come back to me at some point. There's one other number that I wanted to give you just before we wrap up this topic. This I thought was interesting, and I wondered if you might have an explanation for it. The attendance for this season was dramatically improved in the last 4 games. Now, there are possibilities here. So in the first 5 games versus the last 4, the average attendance per game was about 6,000 better over the last 4. So we're talking about 6,000 extra people in these last 4 games. It also coincided with Chad Kelly's return from suspension. It coincided with the fall season. Are these numbers the way they are because early in the season it's harder to draw people to BMO Field? Over the summer, it's harder to draw Torontonians who may be leaving the city and have cottage things to do, or there are so many other entertainment options in the summer in Toronto. Is it related to Chad Kelly? Is it related to the excitement level of what was going on in the field? Is it people getting on board as the season went on and saying, hey, this is a pretty good Argos team? What has contributed to such a stark difference? Because that's a really extreme difference. Like 6,000 people with the crowds that we're talking about here, that's a very large number.
Yeah, I think it is probably there's less competition for the dollar. Like, as the fall comes in and kids go back to school and people go back to work, there's less kind of going on to cottages or going on trips or being out of town for extended time. So you're home. Leafs haven't started yet. The Jays have flamed out. The Raptors have not started yet. So there is a window there where there just is not very much professional sports going on in the city. Then you have a team that's doing pretty well. You have nice weather. I do think it's those combinations of a team that's doing pretty well that hits a window where people are looking for something to do. TFC is a washout. Leafs are not yet in. Raptors are not yet in. Jays are a washout. Essentially leaves them as the only show in town. And that window, as opposed to the spring window, which is kind of like that, but people are sort of on the go in the spring. I think in the fall, people are just around. You're not going away for the weekend. It's easier to get a hold of people in September and October.
And then on top of that, I guess maybe we'll end this with what else we think they can do to increase attendance. And I think this is a really tough. I don't have the answer to that. I've thought about this a lot. We've been talking about this for years, and it's a common topic. I think they're on the right track with focusing on youth. I do think that works well. I think giveaways work really well too. We saw the response to those hat giveaways. I know that's a cost you got to build in, and whether or not that makes it worthwhile, I don't know. I don't really have the answer to that. But those hats, everybody loved. And I know what do you think of your hat, JB?
Yeah, I want a hat. That's what I want. I want a hat. Every time I go to the game, it just openly mocks me how people are wearing those hats and living their best life in that hat. And
those are great promotions, though. But they cost, though. That's the problem. Is that you have to justify that and kind of talk about the bottom line. But they work. You get people. It's a good product. That's the thing. I feel like whatever you can do to bring people into the stadium, the hope is they see a game. People that are there, you look at down the stretch here, people that came for the first time this season, you're seeing a great product on the field. The value at the game is great, from food prices to drink prices. You compare it to anywhere else you go. It's pretty hard not to have a great time and not to think we should come back.
We've talked about it. I still think under 12 should be free. I understand, at least that's just a fairly radical idea, but I do think, the more you can get people in, it's one of those things. I think if you can get people in, I bet you their return numbers are pretty good. I bet you they're 1 and I'm never coming back. is not the norm. The hard thing is getting people to come. So I think maybe that's what you look at is you can get a family, two parents and two kids to come and they have a really good time. I think you're likely to get those people to come. And even though, you're not getting tickets for everybody, if you're going to go under 12, but I that would be my thought. Or if not free, like highly discounted.
I don't know quite how to do that. Like, this is not a topic I know much about, but I don't know, like, because then, can you transfer tickets like that? You'd have to transfer them to other kids or whatever. I don't know. Those are probably secondary problems, but it's just something that came to mind when you started talking about that. Like, what if you can't go to a game? Do you have to find a family with the exact same adult to child ratio to replace them, etc.? And then, of course, you're losing out on some revenue too, just like the hats promotion. I don't know. You'd have to figure that out. Like, what's the math likely to tell you? Is it worth it in the long term to do something like that? I don't know. That's interesting. I like that idea too. I'm not sure the math works on it, but if it does, I think that's something.
Look, and I know it's money too. I love promotional nights. I know that they're not making the kind of Rogers money to have bobbleheads. But I think items like that, look, the Jays do it. I think items like that are a great idea, promotional giveaway stuff, because you just want to get the people in there once, and you're way more likely to get them back if they come once. I really believe that, and so maybe you do have a bobblehead of somebody if that isn't too rich.
They are expensive. I like bobbleheads a lot, but like the last bobblehead the Argos did was Darrell Walker, and he was with the team for like 5 minutes, and then everyone's got this Darrell Walker bobblehead.
Yeah, maybe like a mini bobblehead. It doesn't have to be like the full size big one.
You do a mini bobblehead, but I think you go with like an Argos legend instead of a current player. Maybe you go with. You go with pinball or you choose your Argos legend, Doug Flutie, whatever. Like, there's so many Argos legends to choose from. Like, if you're gonna go bobblehead, I think that's the way to go instead of current player. Just because you never know. Like, and the worst thing, player ends up getting traded 2 weeks later or just not signed for the next year, and everyone's got that bobblehead of a player that's now coming back as a visitor to make things tough on them. I don't know where to put my Walker bobblehead now.
I think there's stuff there, but it's tough. It's tough because everything costs money. If you're going to bring in halftime shows, if you're gonna try and have, I agree. You don't want to get too corny. I don't necessarily need Cowboy and Western Night, but people love it.
I like Cowboy and Western Night. That's a great hat. That cowboy hat's fantastic.
People love it. I know people love those Argo cowboy hats.
Yep. Yeah, I'm all for it. I'll do any kind of Argo hat. Like, sign me up for like a pork pie hat or a fedora, whatever. Argo, anything night. Let's get into
more themed promotion nights. Would be might be fun.
Let's get into again, just before I switch topics. All that said, I think everything's going.
Podcaster hat night. That'd be a fun night.
Podcaster hat night. Yeah. I think everything's going really well there, and I do think the Argos have to be commended for the work that they've put in on this. The numbers clearly backing up their effort. It's positive. It's going well. It's just got to keep going in that direction. I think it will, because again, like these kids that they've been targeting for the last several years are starting to get to the age where they're becoming consistent Argo fans. They're still going with their parents, but eventually that's going to turn into them buying tickets themselves, and you keep adding more and more kids to that pile, and you're getting a younger demographic too. That's all good. All right, let's get into PFF. So Chad Kelly was honored for the third time in the last 6 weeks by PFF. He put down this week the fourth highest score of the year in the CFL, a 93.6 grade, which is hugely impressive. His PFF numbers have been good over the last few games without him having to go full out and drag the Argos to a win. Like, it hasn't been him. His numbers have been great, and they were good again in the first half, especially this past week. Obviously, he played well. But the key is, and this is where you grade well in PFF too, not making mistakes. Like, not having turnovers is a great way to have a strong PFF grade. It's those turnovers that crush you right away, whether you're a quarterback or a kicker. You just can't have mistakes. And if you play mistake-free ball, even if you don't throw 50 passes, you're going to grade well. And I think there's some accuracy to that because it usually means your team's going to play well, your team's going to win football games. So yeah, Chad honored, as I said, with that great score, but he wasn't alone. On the PFF team for this week, you had receivers Deshaun Brissett, DeMonte Coxey. Coxey had a really nice game, 5 catches, 5 targets, 80 yards. He had that really nice kind of basket catch on that first drive of the game that got them down to the 1-yard line. Deshaun Brissett with his best game of the season by far, 2 touchdowns, had that gorgeous corner route for the 1 touchdown where he made that really nice inside move, completely turned the halfback around and then cut back to the outside. So those guys, yeah, deserving of being on that team. On the line, you had Ryan Hunter still playing a great left tackle. And I think this is maybe an off-season topic for us, but the fact that they had 5 Canadians on the offensive line for 3.5 quarters last week, I think is interesting. Again, you don't want Dejon Allen to go anywhere. You absolutely want him as your right tackle, but maybe 4 becomes the norm next season. Maybe that's something we can talk more about. We've talked about Sage Dockstader being added. They've got so many good Canadian offensive linemen, and they haven't even seen Darius Sirocco once all season long. If I'm in the front office, that's my plan for next year. Is I'm thinking, as well as Ryan Hunter has played at left tackle, I'm thinking 4 Canadian linemen all season long next year. That's part of my plan because you can do some really cool things with the rest of your unit. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Ralph Hawley has Ralph Hawley stopped surprising you? Because I still, every game, am surprised by how well he plays. I know we're in the last game of the season coming up. Ralph Hawley is so impressive to me, how he's able to take single teams and just throw the guy aside. And no one, they're still not double teaming Ralph Hawley because there's so much danger everywhere else with Seresna, with Arimolade when Brinkman's in there too. Hawley gets so many one-on-ones and he destroys the opposition. As it got to a point where you're just used to it, and this is old hat with Hawley throwing 300-pound men aside and sacking the quarterback?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is he has not gotten the respect of being a highlighted player on opposition boards. But that is coming. I think next year you're going to see teams realize that we can't just leave him one-on-one. He's wrecking games. So that's the dream, is that when you build a defensive line like this, somebody is going to get fed because you can't double everybody. And he's absolutely taken that opportunity and run with it. So, thankfully he's not due for a huge contract. So that, I think that's a win-win for the Argos.
The sack numbers are really fun with Ralph Hawley. He's leading the league with 8
I know, that's what
sacks.
I mean. Like he's the kind of guy, like if he were due for a contract in the offseason, oh my God, Hamilton would give him, I can't even imagine what Hamilton would give him, but they would back up the Tim Hortons truck to bring Ralph Hawley down.
And of course, the guy tied with him at the top of the CFL in quarterback sacks is Jake Seresna, the guy that's beside him. Like how amazing to have. This is the interior. These are D tackles. We're not talking about DNs that typically are the guys that pick up sacks. Like to have 2 D tackles that combine for 16 sacks, 2 D tackles on the same team leading the CFL in sacks it just blows me away. And then Robbie Smith has 6, so he's only 2 back. Flo Arimolade also has 6. Like, this is the production that we've seen from this defensive line. They are, without question, the best defensive line unit in the CFL. But it's Ralph Hawley. Like, we knew Seresna was going to be good. We knew what Robbie Smith was. We knew what Arimolade was. And we know what, like, Brinkman, too. We haven't even mentioned. And he might be the most valuable of all those guys in some situations, in some games, in some days. And yet, there's Ralph Hawley, rookie Ralph Hawley, just tearing it up on the inside. What a player. It's so exciting to watch Ralph Hawley play. And I got confirmation. Remember we talked about his guitar celebration? I got confirmation this week that is a Motown tribute, that guitar playing sax celebration dance he's got.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm going to look it up. I swear there's a Blue Bomber who does it.
Yeah, but this is from Ralph Hawley. So this is
Oh
not.
well, I'm sure he's not going to say I'm calling out another guy.
No, but he's not. He's not calling out. Ralph Holley doesn't. He's not looking at a blue bomber and saying, "You know what? This is my first year in the league, and as a rookie, I'm going to start making fun of someone else's sack celebration." No,
Right.
this goes back. This is not a new thing for Ralph Holley. So that's where it comes from. And then just finishing up our list, Benji Franklin on there being honored.
Hey, Reggie Franklin.
Yeah. And can we talk about how far he's come from?
Yep.
You remember his, like the first game of the season? We're looking at each other like, man, I don't know. We knew it was going to be a rough transition. I don't know if Benji Franklin's going to be able to make it. We had a couple busts in there, and then every game he was a little bit better, and then fewer and fewer mistakes and more highlight reel plays. And this past week, he's in on tackles in the backfield. He's anticipating throws. He's great in coverage, and he can play coverage in man. He can play off. His comfort level in zone is so much higher than it used to be. So, most improved player on the Argos this season, I think without question, right?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. Yeah, maybe. I think Polk has really come along too.
Polk started pretty well though. Like it wasn't like when Polk first got, like we knew Polk was going to be something. Like he came in as a highly anticipated
Yeah, he
player.
flashed, but I don't know how much he was like a complimentary piece of the room. Where now I look to him as one of their starting wide receivers.
Well, he's basically been the main guy. Like Polk is
Yeah,
the guy that you would want to defend if you're setting up like how do we shut down Toronto's offense. I think you're now starting with well on the passing side, you're starting with Mackay Polk more than you are with Coxie and Daniels, which says something because obviously those two are big names and rightfully so. So yeah, no, I think Mackay Polk has. I don't want to underplay or downplay what he's done this season.
yeah. I mean, look, he's become a focus of the team. That's pretty good improvement.
It is a good improvement. But again, I thought he started. I don't know. He started so well that in the first couple of games they got rid of Rasheed Bailey. That
You,
like
you
that's
saw him
how.
starting. He started at the top and just stayed there.
Well, he didn't start at the top, but he started like he's like, well, this guy's good enough to get rid of this is our leader in receptions and receiving yards. Like so that's a pretty good start. But yeah, no, he's improved, sure. But I think it's just more drastic with Benji Franklin because we weren't sure he was starting opposite Leonard Johnson. Leonard Johnson isn't even on the team anymore, hasn't been for weeks, and Benji Franklin is is becoming a star. So,
Well, there's only room for one, unfortunately.
yeah, and well then Tavares. Where this is off topic here, but like Tavares, the way that he's been able to come back and find that level again. And so I don't know what was missing with him. Like, I don't know what the difference was because the Tavares we saw in training camp didn't look like the Tavares we're seeing now. Like the Tavares we're seeing now is what we saw last year and the year before from him, where he was an outstanding contributor in the secondary. Like what wasn't there in training camp with him? He wasn't honored this weekend, so this is a whole different segment, I guess now. But I just don't know what the difference is. I don't know what triggered him to kind of go back to that all-star level Tavares that we kind of got used to over the last couple of seasons that just wasn't there in training camp this year. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. And then the last player honored this week by PFF, Liram Haralahu, which I got a kick out of. It wasn't a great week for field goal kickers. So Liram, who had one field goal on one attempt, was perfect on his converts, got the PFF nod despite not getting it when he was 8 for 8 because of course someone else went 7 for 7 last week and the distance is factored in. So it's just kind of funny. You go 8 for 8,
Yeah,
you don't get honored. 1 for 1, you're in.
He made the Argos hype poster for the playoff game.
I love that too. I know you look at the players that are on there and there's Haralahu. Awesome. I love that.
Like on an Avengers poster, he's right there as Iron Man.
They do look like Avengers posters. Everyone in their their flex or whatever else it is, and yeah.
And he has a shot for the record this week, right?
Yeah, he would have to. So he is now
Week 3.
is it 3 or 4? 3 to tie,
I think
4
3
to
to tie,
4 to
maybe
take
4
it.
to win.
So yeah, there's a chance. It's too bad he only got the 1 this past week. 2 would have really made it something. You even wonder, like, maybe, we'll get into this in a little bit, but like, is this a week that you might see Gachuz or something like that instead of Haralahu? We'll
I
have to see
know.
if he
I mean,
even
that's
gets that.
probably the smart play, to be honest.
Yeah, so we'll see if he gets that shot. But we can talk about that in our next or a couple segments from now. All right, pick 6 this week. HN with a question. HN, because we were using your question, you have won a 6-pack from Something in the Water Brewing. Pick 6, a segment that's been sponsored by Something in the Water Brewing all season long. And when you ask questions and we pick your question to answer, you win a 6-pack from Something in the Water. So, HN, you got to get down to Something in the Water Brewing, pick up your 6-pack. And thank you for sending in your question. This one's way off everything else we've been talking about. And it just seemed like the perfect time of year for this, because there's been a lot of discussion around like the UFL struggling and people talking about American markets and everything else. He asks, do you think the CFL should just bite the bullet, put a team in St. Mary's Stadium, get to 10 teams, shorten the season? I feel interest is waning when the NFL is in full flight until the CFL playoffs start. Thanks. So I like this question because I can't stress enough how badly I want a 10th team in the CFL. I don't even care where it is. It's easy for me to say. It's not my money on the line. I'm not an owner that's going to be having to prop this up. Of course, it's easy for me to say. But just as a fan of the league, I really, really want 10 teams. And I'm to the point where I don't really care where it is. I don't really care if there's even an owner or if the league just takes it over and loses money on it. I know this is not sound investment advice or anything like that, and it's not something that I don't think any of the owners would sign off on or the commissioner. But I just think the improvement, the quality of the league as a whole that you would get from that 10th team, I really do think it is going to make a difference. And you have no more, like gone are the multiple 3-game weeks and stuff like that. There are no unusual buys put into your schedule. You can shorten the season by 1 week and still have every team have their 2 buys, and you do them over 2 specific weeks of the season, and you can space them out perfectly so that every team gets an ideal buy schedule. Nobody's got week 1 buy or week 21 buy where it's something that you're like, oh man, when you read the schedule, you're like, oh, we have first week, we had last week buy, oh, that's the worst. You can even it out. The entire East Division, you get your buy in after week 6, and then again after week 13. West, you get 7 and 14. Those are your bye weeks, whatever it is, something like that. And everything else, works itself out. They'll find a way to make that work so that you don't have to have these rotating schedules of buys. So that's my vote. You, a guy with obviously East Coast ties and everything else. What's your thought on this? Is it pretty different from mine?
No, I'd love to see there be a 10th team in Halifax. I was really disappointed when they went to the Victoria game. I just didn't see what that's building to. I'd love to see a Halifax game. There doesn't seem to be much corporate interest in buying a team or building a stadium without a lot of government money. And that is not an easy sell currently because the East does not have a big CFL history. But if you were to find a way to run a league operated team for a couple of years and hook people, I think Halifax, I think the Maritime fans would love the tailgate action of it, would love coming to cheer against Toronto and Montreal. Believe me, like that's not a hard sell to cheer against Ottawa. I mean, that's kind of baked in. So I think people would be into cheering against the rest of the country. I think people be into having delicious beverages and hot food before the game. Have it walking distance, have it at St. Mary's. Yeah, I think if you build it, they will come. I think so. If the league had the stomach to do it. I don't see a downside. I really don't.
You have to market it almost like old school Las Vegas, where like first your first stay is free or whatever else. We're like, here, come, here's a team. Look, we'll look after the team for a couple of seasons. Just see if you like it, and then before you know it, they're hooked. They're loving,
and then
everything else, and then an owner takes over.
I agree. I think that's what has to happen, and I think that it would be successful. I really do. They only had one game in Halifax. They had one game in Acadia, which is an hour and a half outside Halifax, and they had one game in Halifax. And the game they had in Halifax was a resounding, sold out success. So, I don't see where the naysayers might say, well, it can't be done. I mean, I think it can be done if the league is willing to carry that debt. And when has the league ever been this healthy to be able to carry that debt? Now, MLSE might not answer the phone call, but I think the league is pretty healthy right now across the board. So if there was ever a time, I don't think there's really a fire anywhere. If there was ever a time the league could kind of pool their resources and carry a team in Halifax, it's now.
And people have also talked about the idea of, well, what if your one team is south of the border? I don't want that. That's not the way I want to go. I would take it still because I want a 10th team so badly, but that's not what I want. I'm still with you on Halifax, but honestly, I don't care. Wherever. Find a 10th place for a team, make it work. I just think Halifax is the best long-term solution.
You got to be east.
Is the best that's what I want the most. That is what I want the most. But really, I want 10 teams. And
I don't want another team in Saskatchewan.
I'd be fine with the Saskatchewan wouldn't. Obviously the Rough Riders wouldn't, but I think they can support it.
Putting a team in Halifax, even if you have to kind of force feed it, I think is the play and is what they should do.
Hey, Chan, thank you for your question. It's a good one. And it's always, I'm always going to pick a question about the 10th team, the CFL, because that is, of all CFL topics, that's the one, for me, I love this league so much. I think the league it's my favorite sports league in the world. And I like a lot of sports and a lot of different sports leagues. I love the CFL. It needs 10 teams, and that would make it perfect in my mind. All right, let's get into the game preview, JB. It's the Edmonton Elks this week. Toronto started, week 3 of the season. They've got the game against the Elks. It's been a long time since we've seen the Elks. This one doesn't matter to the Argos in terms of the standings. There's no ramifications for playoffs or seeding or anything else. They've got the second spot locked up in the East Division. And for the Elks, nothing has mattered in some time, not to the same degree that we've seen over the last couple of years. But they are locked in to the 4th place spot in the West. They're playing for pride, but they've also got a few other things on the line. You've got Trey Ford, whose contract is expiring. And not only do they have to make a call on him, he needs to make a call on them, right? So that's one of the bigger things going on here. And a lot of my analysis for this game actually comes down to how they're going to deal with that quarterback situation and what they're maybe thinking about with regards to this game. So that's the way I see this is in terms of a game preview. I don't think this is a game where Toronto should risk anything at all. It's really tough in the salary cap environment to get a lot of players rest. You can get some. It's tough though, because it's just the way the math works. If you're activating practice roster players, suddenly those guys are getting game checks that are counting towards the cap. It really, at this time of the year, especially, it's not easy. So there's not going to be a lot of players that are suddenly put into games. Think about the few games over the last few years that it seems always against Edmonton for some reason, but this is that game a few years ago where nobody in the city was into that game because it didn't matter for Toronto, it didn't matter for Edmonton, and it seems like one of those again, but this one's at least in Edmonton. But even then, some big names weren't there, but a lot of the regulars were still having to play. So it's not like they're going to be able to rest everybody. So you kind of have to pick and choose, who needs the rest the most. And maybe that's where we start, JB. Who would you Who absolutely, in your mind, has to sit this week against the Edmonton Elks?
Well, I think certainly the offensive line has to sit. Jones should sit. I'm not a Kelly sitter. I'd like to see Kelly play the first half.
With a backup offensive line?
Yeah.
Oh, you can't do that. Like, I don't even want to play Kelly with Allen out.
I mean, it is a backup offensive line, but it's not like a training camp offensive line.
Yeah, but you can't. No, I can't accept that. You can't have. I don't want Chad Kelly playing because Dejan Allen should be resting. Like, just missing one guy, I'm like, no, even with Allen playing, like, because the difference is so big. If Kelly goes down with an injury, Toronto can't win the Grey Cup.
No,
like, that's it. He's the
line
one player
it for sure.
Yeah, and so if you're going with a light line, like, no chance for me.
I do not support a Chad Kelly's sitting. Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. Honestly, I think the line, and I'd probably say Carey too.
What about Wyndham McManus?
No, I don't think so. I think he knows what his body's doing. He's improved every game since he's come back from injury. I think if he's ready to roll, I think you keep playing him.
I don't know. There's so many more guys I would like to get rest. By positional group for the O-line, I think you have to rest Allen. He's banged up. He may not even be able to go anyway. But even if he can, I think you try your best to rest him. I think Giffen, we saw how banged up he was. He was limited at practice today. We'll get into the injury report in just a minute. I think you try and rest him as well. Kelly for sure, Carey for sure. Like, there's a lot of guys I'm naming now. Receivers you can get away with playing because you don't necessarily need to put them in harm's way the same way that O-line, running backs, quarterbacks are. On the D-line, the one guy I want to highlight is Serezna. I think you need to, he's been playing pretty banged up, I think, for most of the season. And I think and you've got Williams there anyway, and you want to see more from Williams. I think Holly can still keep improving. So I think you can rest Serezna. That would make sense to me. I would rest McManus. Maybe I wouldn't rest McManus, but I would leave it up to him and say, what do you think? And then I also think about Adeleke, and hear me out on this. I know that seems like a weird one. Adeleke has been playing outstanding Sam linebacker, and the problem is, like, we're already dealing with house money here because they have lost multiple Sam linebackers, and it is the hardest position to replace, or apparently not for the Argos. They have three guys that have been excellent at it, but to lose Quincy Moget, to lose Robert Priester, Tunde Adeleke is playing so well. I sit him. I let Tyshawn Blackburn play because that's a spot that I want to see him at anyway. This is a great opportunity. Give the whole game to Tyshawn at Sam. See how he looks there. I just think that's probably the way I would approach this. The rest of the DBs, everything's fine. But if you're thinking about one more guy, Haralahu, he's really valuable. The last thing you need is tweaking something. It's not a common thing that we see with kickers, but it does happen. So I would probably
giving him a shot for the record. I think he deserves the shot at the record.
I know. I get that, but I don't know. I'm also thinking about winning a Grey Cup. Less about personal records.
He's not going to get hurt. Come on. You can get hurt flipping in the tub.
Yeah, but again, you don't fault yourself for that. I don't know. But those are the guys I think I would try and rest. I think those are all the priorities for me. I don't expect it to be that many guys, but those are the guys I want to try and find a way not to have on the field. Let's get into that injury report. So for Toronto, what stands out? Dejan Allen not practicing today. He's got that arm injury, what Coach Dinwiddie after the game called a stinger. We'll see how it goes this week. I would be stunned if he plays, regardless of how well he's doing in his recovery. Then you had Woody Barron, Brandon Calver. They're both full. They are eligible to come back. Maybe Woody Barron's a guy that you see if he's ready enough.
Love to see him. I think that's I think exactly. That's a perfect game to give him a full shot.
And Brandon Calver too. They've been playing without a fullback for 6 weeks now, I guess. Maybe that is another player you want to mix in there. Jonathan Edouard practicing full now for a couple weeks. Is he somebody that is going to be back in the mix, or is he well enough to go? We don't really know. Dylan Giffen was limited today with that back injury that he was fighting through. I think he actually had multiple injuries in that game, but he's listed right now as back. Daniel Kwamu's going full. That's great to see. Jonathan Jones limited with a hamstring. Gregor McKellar went full with that toe that he's been battling. And Robbie Smith was away from practice today for personal reasons. So that's the Argos injury report. With Edmonton, not too much that stands out. Sam Achimpong was limited for both of the practices this week. I like Sam. I like to see him play. I enjoy seeing a lot, not all former Argos taking on the Argos, but a game like this, I would love to see all the old Argos out there, and there's quite a few of them on the Edmonton roster. But yeah, he was limited, and nothing else of too much significance really stood out for me up and down that. Vincent Forbes, Montbleau limited. DK Bonhomme was full. He's been a fun rookie to watch as well. So, Edmonton's going to bring basically the same roster that they brought last week to this game. And I think it's all going to focus around Trey Ford and either evaluating him or selling him on the idea of coming back to Edmonton. So that's our injury report. And that means it is time for an unusual episode of OCDC. For OCDC, this is a different kind of setup because the focus is less about winning the game. And, we can maybe look at it that way. I don't know how you've planned this, JB, but I'm looking at this in terms of what I would try and do as the offensive coordinator as Edmonton or Toronto. And that's not necessarily meaning I'm trying to win this football game. So we'll start off with the Elks, and I'll start on offense first. I am doing a couple things here. Yes, I am actually trying to win the game as Edmonton, but I think more importantly, I have already assessed Trey Ford. And if I'm Edmonton's coaching staff, I want him back and I want him to be my starter. I'm now trying to sell Trey Ford on the idea of building the team around him and that's going to happen. And I'm trying to sell the fans on coming back next year and they see something that they can believe in and go forward with next year. Remember that new ownership taking over. I think they want to see this stuff too. So I've got an exciting game plan. I want bombs away. I want exciting plays. I want every play to be a potential highlight reel play. I want flea flickers. I want quarterback runs. I want stuff that caters to Trey Ford's skill set, but what really takes advantage of his ability to throw the football. I don't want to showcase him as a runner. Sure, we have it in there too, but I want to showcase him as a passer, and I want to just absolutely take all restrictions off, no training wheels, fire the football downfield, go deep every play if you want. That's fine. We can have 60-yard bombs all day long. That's my offensive plan this week. If we get away with a win too, that's great, but it's mostly about opening it up, everyone enjoying it. Here's your popcorn. What's your defensive plan for the Edmonton Elks this week?
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, the game is not even a glorified exhibition. It is an exhibition game. There's certainly nothing to be gained by putting anything on film that you might use in the playoffs. So I think defensively, you're probably going to be very boring and very vanilla with, rotations and basically just line up. And here's, we're going to line up in this and we're going to stay in this. And, let's see what happens. We're not going to try and confuse you. By and large, I would imagine that would be the philosophy. I think that you are perfectly fine with him throwing really deep. I think that's great practice from an Argo perspective. I think that the run and the short game has been cleaned up pretty well by Toronto, and now, can we play deep zones? Can we play 3 and 2 without busts? I think that's what you want to practice is use this game as an opportunity to practice your deep ball coverage. Which is difficult to do. It's a whole different skill set. Your safety angles, your safety being able to read high lows. Yeah, I think it can still be a very useful game if Edmonton comes into it with that plan to kind of throw deep, which is, they've been very explosive. I think the line will try and get sacks without pressure, which again is, great practice. So those are the two things. Like defensively is okay. Can we how much pressure can we get sending four? Without a ton of scheming. Let's just look at guys one-on-one tapes. Are you beating your guy, or are you getting dominated without double team help? And then defensively, can we play this deep zone without any bust? How sophisticated can we make our deep zone before guys start picking the wrong route? So from a film point of view, I would love to watch those two aspects during this game. In that way, we're really lucky that it's Edmonton, because Edmonton is such a fun, explosive offense. That's a great team to kind of focus a few things in film, as opposed to like if they're playing Calgary or even Ottawa again, or Montreal. Like it just would be, I think, far less useful. I think Edmonton's going to come out and try and blow the doors off Toronto for their fans, and that is useful for Toronto if Toronto is okay with losing the game, which I'm sure they are.
Let's flip it around. And if I'm now the Toronto offense, I'm going super conservative because I don't want to show anything. I'm not running any new plays. I've only run plays that teams have seen on film multiple times this season. And I'm trying, you're trying to stay healthy, but you're also trying to evaluate some of the guys you haven't seen yet. You're using this. I don't see, there's not a ton of depth pieces I can see really getting involved in this postseason, aside from a couple guys. I do think you want to see, Williams for the potential of the season, maybe Woody Barron. There are a couple guys that we've seen in games. Yeah, those guys. And I chose two defensive guys, and I'm trying to preview the offense here. But, maybe, I don't know. I guess you want Kevin Mittal more involved. Those are the players that I want to see more of. So let's see Mittal. Let's see Adeboboye. Let's see McMahon. That's where I want to focus things. I want to see Polk too. Let's keep working on him, get him more involved too. But I think I try and make Mittal the focal point of my receiving core, and I want McMahon, Adeboboye to be the focal point of my running back room. And I think you also want to see if you can run a full Canadian O-line, because you're resting Allen anyway. Get 5 guys in there. Let's see what that looks like. And in terms of the quarterbacks, this is a tough call. I want your thought on this. If I'm not playing Kelly, how do you want this quarterback situation to work? I almost want more Arbuckle than I do Dukes in this game. And I'll tell you why, because I think Dukes has actually got a fair amount of activity this year. He's taken a number of snaps. I know he still needs more, but I don't know. I think if the only reason these guys are in, if something did happen to Kelly, then that's the only chance these guys are going in the playoffs. And in that situation, I think I feel more comfortable with the veteran in that case. I think it's probably going to be Arbuckle over Dukes, even though I see Dukes as the backup. And I think he's usually, in the regular season, he's for sure the first guy in. I just think in a playoff situation, the added pressure, I feel like Arbuckle is maybe the guy that you go with there. So maybe he's the guy that I want in this game. And if that's not the case for the Argos, if it's Dukes, then Dukes is the guy I want in the game. But for me, I think at this stage, it might be Arbuckle. So I think I want Arbuckle getting more time. But I want both guys in this game.
Yeah, I would have both guys. I mean, I think that they're basically, I think the team seems to have shown that they are Dukes. They are Team Dukes. I think that they've shown that pretty clearly. I mean, we may kind of have blocked out the first half of the season, but I don't think you're going to have any issues with conservative play calling once we roll in our old quarterbacks. They have a hard time moving the ball. So I think that's going to come with it for sure. I would probably play each a half. We'll split it right down the middle. But I don't know. They seem to really like Duke, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him get most of the game. But I think it'll be a reminder of how valuable the quarterback position is.
And then finishing up, what's your Edmonton plan for shutting down the Argos offense that we don't even know what to make of? Are you sending the house on every play? Are you trying guys out for next year? What's your philosophy?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think in this situation at home, You're going to send heat. You're going to try and entertain fans in every way you can. Um, Dukes cannot throw the ball downfield very well, so I think that you are looking to bring a lot of heat to cover. You're going to play that man too. You're going to cover the short passes, dare him to throw the ball deep, and just bring a lot of heat. And I think that's going to be successful. I think they're going to have a hard time. Dukes doesn't move the ball very well, so I think Edmonton will be very aggressive in playing tight man coverage off the snap, and then basically Dukes didn't have a great time picking an open receiver when everybody was really tightly covered, and then the pass protection broke down. I'm not going to paint a pretty picture. I think this is going to be this is not going to be a very good game for Toronto with a backup offensive line in against a team looking to light them up to entertain their crowd. I think all the ingredients are there for an afternoon that you have to like as a coach, in terms of film to watch. But I think from a fan point of view, I think it's going to be a pretty clear shellacking by Edmonton.
And of course, we've done all this time on this game and watched them go out there and just start all the regulars like it's a playoff game or something like that. They may, that's the thing. We're not even considering that. But after how things went last year, where they rested a lot down the stretch, and as opposed to like Montreal, who got hot and then just kept winning because they needed to and never got a rest and went all the way and won the Grey Cup. Maybe we're judging this too quickly, and maybe Coach Dinwiddie isn't going to go the way that we would go. Maybe he's just going to say, you know what, everyone's playing. We're going to go all out and try and win this game. I'm banking on the fact that they're not, but obviously that would flip everything we've been saying for the last 10 minutes on its head if they decide to go that route and start everyone that they can. Maybe everyone except Allen. Maybe that's what Coach Dinwiddie's thinking, but we'll have to wait and see. My one thing for this week, it's really simple. Stay healthy. That's the one thing this week. Use players sparingly. Don't put players in bad situations. It's still football. You can't control injuries, but that's the one thing I'm going to be cheering for. From an Argos perspective, is you want to see, and this is not just the Argos. It's all playoff teams. You want to see every playoff team be able to go into the playoffs healthy. You want it to. You just hate to see any kind of injury in the last week of the season. And so, this being an Argos podcast, that's the one thing this week. What about for you?
I want to see a field goal record set. Let's go 4 field goals, all-time number of field goals kicked in one season. And then I want a Kickstart My Heart montage by TSN on the field goals. So for the playoff opening, we have the Tommy Lee drums banging and the fireworks firing and the field goal after field goal after field goal. That's my dream.
How does this one end for you? What's the score? Who wins it?
Well, if they don't play all of their starters, I think Edmonton wins. I think Edmonton has a young, exciting, they've played this game before when Edmonton was terrible. Edmonton's got a young, exciting team. They went from 8th in offense to 1st over the course of 2 months. That's very difficult to do. So I think Edmonton's really exciting. I think they're going to come out and try and build on this game. And I think Toronto, hopefully, is not going to be interested in this game at all. So I see Edmonton coming out on top, pretty handily, because these two teams are just at two radically different points as to the importance of this. Edmonton's trying to convince people to come next year to watch them, and Toronto's got a Grey Cup on their eyes.
Yeah, and I think the same thing. And again, maybe it goes a different way if Chad Kelly and the rest of the team is all playing. That's very different. In that case, I would think Toronto would win, but I just don't see that being the case. That's not what I would do. I don't think it's what Coach Dinwiddie would do. So with all the guys resting, with Edmonton, this being their Grey Cup, I think the Elks win at home. I'm going to say 20-15 as my score in this one. It's possible to guess.
I see it more probably 28-14.
Yeah, no, that's fair. JB, it is time for Put Me Down for 20. We both struggled last week. You actually, no, sorry, I was saying that out of habit. You won last week. I can't believe I actually wrote it down as a loss on our log just because.
Yeah, well, exactly.
That's what I've been doing for a while. You were. Let me see here. You were 1-1, which is
I'll take it.
that's a huge week for you. And so you are actually up 1 golden fleece from last week. So you're now at 75.5 golden fleeces. I was 0-2. I had Toronto plus 14, which looked like I could take that to the bank at about halftime. Toronto by 14. But yeah, that was not to be. That would have been a big plus 270 win, and I can't believe that didn't hold on. But yeah, I was 0-2, so I'm down to 220 golden fleeces. You were at 75.5. Here's what I had this week. I'm going to parlay Calgary outright and Hamilton outright for both on the money line, and that ends up being a plus 450 play. And then in the Toronto game, I'm going to take the under. 10 golden fleeces under 49.5, and that's at minus 105. So those are my 2 bets this week. What are you doing with your golden fleeces, JB?
I'll take Edmonton to win at plus 110. Still lots of juice. Not a lot of love out there for Edmonton, so I will take that reflective juice from and then in Montreal, I'm going to take Winnipeg. I think Winnipeg, is going to come in. Montreal still does not need to play. I think they've decided to kind of dial things back a little bit. They're not going to want to show Winnipeg anything. So I think Winnipeg comes in and wins by 2 touchdowns there. So I have Winnipeg at winning by plus 14, which will give me, I believe, 290. Plus 290. Winnipeg wins by plus 14.
And as always, please do not take any of our picks seriously. This is our disclaimer. You've seen what's happened to JB's golden fleeces. So only ever bet what you're happy to lose is the cost of entertainment. I wouldn't say that
you're rolling in golden fleeces either.
I've got 20 golden fleeces to play with here. So, no, as well as things. That's the thing. I think I'm actually having a decent year and I'm only up 20 golden fleeces, which, tells you should not listen to us. So, please just use this as an entertainment piece and nothing else. CFL picks, will end things off with the CFL picks. And by the way, you're going to see my first hedge of the entire season, and it's coming in week 21. I've mocked you for hedging multiple times. I'll give you my explanation in just a moment. So we are starting off with Hamilton at Ottawa. I'm going to take Hamilton. I actually think they should be favored in this game, and they're not. Ottawa's got nothing to play for at all. They're going to be, I would presume, resting as many guys as they can. Like I expect Toronto to be in Edmonton, and Hamilton's not doing that. And Hamilton looks good. When Bo Levi Mitchell's playing well, he's trying to win an MOP. So I think Hamilton wins this one handily. What are you saying?
I went back and forth on this. I think Ottawa wins at home. I do. I think Ottawa does. I know Hamilton's really building here, but I think Ottawa is a bit embarrassed about how Toronto dominated that first half, and I do think Ottawa. I would take Hamilton at home. I'm going to take Ottawa at home.
Toronto at Edmonton. This is not the game I'm hedging. I am going to stick with Edmonton in this. I just think Toronto's, like we said, they're going to rest guys. Edmonton isn't. It doesn't mean anything to Toronto. I think it means a lot to Edmonton, believe it or not. So I've got the Elks. What about you?
Yeah, same. I think exactly those two. I think if they don't rest, I think Toronto wins. But if they do rest, which I would assume is the play, I think it's just when you have a mixture of unimportant and important, that's not going to go well. So I like Edmonton there.
Winnipeg at Montreal. I like Winnipeg here for the reasons you put the bet on. It means something to them. Doesn't mean something to Montreal. This is a theme with our picks this week. So I've taken the Blue Bombers. You're doing the same, I assume?
Yes. I mean, it's tough to bet against Montreal at home.
They haven't looked good in a while, though, and it doesn't mean anything to them. Winnipeg needs this.
and it's Winnipeg, so I think they're going to want to be especially vanilla.
Yeah, well, there's a good chance that they'll be waiting for somebody coming out of the East at the end. So, yeah, no, I see that too. And then the last game, this is where I'm going to hedge. Calgary at Saskatchewan. I like Calgary as my bet because the odds are really good. Like the juice is really good. And if Winnipeg wins that last game, Saskatchewan will know by kickoff. And if Winnipeg wins, Saskatchewan no longer needs to. And so from that standpoint, that's why I like that bet. But the thing is, just looking at this straight up and having been burned by Calgary so many times this season, I've just sworn in this picks, the straight up picks, I'm not taking Calgary. I just can't feel good about that at all. Even if the game means nothing to Saskatchewan, they'll have had their lineup set. Like their lineup's already going to be in place by the time they find out. And so even if they're playing conservatively, I think they still win that football game. I think that's the smart play. What about you?
Yeah, I don't want any part of Calgary. I think that's 3-2-1 Cancun.
Well, Friday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Toronto at Edmonton. You can catch Mike Hogan and yours truly on the call on TSN Radio. And then it's playoff time. So yeah, playoffs just around the corner. It feels like we were just starting the season, and here we are in week 21. Toronto at Edmonton, 9:30 start Friday night. That will just about do it for us on this pregame walkthrough episode of the X's and Argos podcast. For JB, this is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.
Go Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe.